On this day, 67 years ago, the United Nations approved the partition plan, recognizing the Jewish people's right to a nation. The director of Zochrot, whose controversial Nakba and Return Film Festival is being held at Tel Aviv Cinematheque this weekend, told IBA's Ari O'Sullivan that the group believes Israel must change its Jewish character and allow Palestinian descendants of the 1948 refugees to move to the country.
Zochrot looks that the birth of Israel was actually a disaster to Palestinian society because within the birth of Israel, we have destroyed over 500 villages, neighborhoods that existed in Palestine. And it caused the creation of 70% of the Palestinian community to become refugees. So Zochrot's standpoint is that in order to achieve long-lasting peace or a vision of peace, we cannot forget and we have to assume responsibility to what happened here 66 or 67 years ago.
So it's your philosophy that the refugees should come back to those very villages?
Our standpoint is that refugees who wish to implement the right of return should be received the right of return. How it will happen, is it to the exact same location, to the exact same place, is something to be left to negotiation between Israelis and Palestinians. But the right is a given right by United Nations Resolution Y94, and it's not for Israel to pass that right.
Zochrot is a kind of a fringe organization. How are you going to get more Israelis to adopt your positions?
I think it is quite clear that the issue of the Nakba and the right of return is a very complex, quite a taboo in Israeli society. So we have to try and deal with it in very creative, various ways. So the film festival is actually one of those actions that we take to invite Israeli to deal with the issue and learn about the issue from a creative angle, to watch film, to watch documentaries, and to try and deal with the issue in a more creative fashion.
Finally, when people say the right of return, that means the end of Israel. That's a very severe threat to the character of Israel. Do you agree with that?
I think there is a difference between the end of Israel and the change of character of Israel. What we are saying is that Israel has been committing crimes for the past 66 years, and it must assume responsibility for that, because the end of the conflict will not happen without addressing those issues. Now, how it would be implemented and what kind of impact it will have on Israel as we know it today, this is something to be left to negotiation. I think it's probably safe to say that it will demand some changes. But we also see that, talking about the nationality law, there is a dispute about the character of Israel. So this is part of the same thing.
Do Jewish people deserve a national homeland?
It's a matter of personal opinion, and I think that there are members of Zochrot that are for two-state solution and says that Israel or the Jewish people does deserve a homeland. And I think the negotiation and the discussion about the implementation of the right of return has to see how it can address both of those rights, not in the same manner that Israel, as we know it today, talks about it.
A Swiss museum has accepted a vast, priceless trove